Thanks. Awesome. Thank you. All right, well, welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and get started, and Tuzo, if you see anybody else pop in, thanks for being behind the scenes there. So I appreciate everyone that is here and attending live. Just know that we are recording this and also streaming to our Facebook page so that it can be shared with a broader audience. So if you don't want to be recorded, feel free, you can turn off your camera if you would like, but we also love seeing your faces. To anyone that doesn't know me, I am Paula Hastings. I am the recruiter for Secours Volunteer Ministry, and I am also an alum from 2018-2019. And I'm joined by 6 of our current volunteers in Baltimore and Richmond right now. So we're very excited to have them here and have them answer some of your questions. And I'm also looking at the Facebook stream as well. So if anyone has any questions on Facebook, feel free to throw that in the comments, and I will keep an eye on those as well. So to begin, we always start off with a prayer, as growing spiritually is a central part of our mission. So I invite you to remind yourself that you are always in the presence of God, and I will read a prayer called God's Timing by Ted Loder. O God of all seasons and senses, grant us the sense of your timing, to submit gracefully and rejoice quietly in the turn of the seasons. In this season of short days and long nights, of gray and white and cold, teach us the lessons of endings. Children growing, friends leaving, loved ones dying, grieving over, grudges over, blaming over, excuses over. O God, grant us a sense of your timing. In this season of short days and long nights, of gray and white and cold, teach us the lessons of beginnings. That such waitings and endings may be the starting place, a planting of seeds which bring to birth what is ready to be born, something right and just and different, a new song, a deeper relationship, a fuller love, in the fullness of your time. O God, grant us the sense of your timing. Amen. Right, so now we'll introduce our volunteers that are present. So I'm going to invite each of the volunteers to share their name, where they're from, their school they went to, and also share a moment that they have seen God's presence in their service so far. So I'm just going to go in the order by which everybody appears on my screen. So we'll start off with Annalise.
Hi, I'm Annalise. I'm actually from Jacksonville, Florida, but I went to school up in Boston called Stonehill College. And a time I saw Christ in service, there was this one particular time when I was on a farm, and I was just joking with a coworker, and he brought up somehow that I liked rice. And so he actually went out and bought me a 20-pound bag of rice. So I thought that was pretty nice and compassionate, just that he was listening and just kind of being there for us and supporting us in any way that he could. I thought that was great.
That's awesome, thank you. And now Destiny.
Hi, my name is Destiny. I'm from Chesapeake, Virginia. I went to school at William & Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. And I've seen God in service lately through interacting with the teachers at the Catholic high school that we're working with. They're just super compassionate and patient with their students. And yeah, every day working with them makes me want to strive to be as compassionate and patient and just like generous. They're so generous of their like time and resources to the kids, and they really want to see them succeed. So I feel like that's definitely a God moment throughout my week all the time.
Thank you. And Michaela.
Hi, I'm Michaela. I'm from California and I went to college up in Middlebury, Vermont. And I think lately I've been seeing Christ in my service when I've been interviewing some high school students for like a student worker spotlight at the school that we're helping out at. And it's just from day to day, I don't know what they're going to say, but it's always generally either really funny or like wildly profound for somebody who is 14 or 15 years old. So I've had several students just kind of point back to Christ in the way that they're just very wise for their age, or they just like give an encouraging word to me without them, I think, realizing it, or they give it to other people and I kind of hear through the grapevine the way that they bless somebody else with those words. So I see Christ in the high schoolers pretty much every day.
Thank you. Now, Tuzo.
Hey, I'm Kuzo. I'm from Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I graduated from Vanderbilt University. I think I've seen Christ in service through the clubs that we lead. And I know on our side, like, we're helping out with an all-girls middle school. And so, like, the club that I lead is called Life's Big Questions. And really, I just throw them a very broad question, like, what is the meaning of happiness? And then I just play devil's advocate for the whole hour. And it's a fantastic time, like, seeing them argue, seeing them think, seeing them trying to, get Mr. Tuzo. Like, I think just that whole experience has been a blast. And I think, like, that, like, in a sense, that joy has been really, like, life affirming.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, Kelly.
I'm Kelly. I'm graduated from St. Joseph's University, and I'm originally from right outside of Philadelphia. And a moment where I've seen God in my service is definitely the times that I'm able to be in a breakout room with students at the middle school that we serve at. I think it's just like a really great space for me to like take responsibility and to be able to like connect with the students one-on-one. And I feel like we've been able to form some like really great conversation and relationships through those moments.
Awesome. Thank you. And now, last but not least, Brian.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm originally from Amityville, New York. I went to the University of Scranton. And somewhere that I see God is most often when I'm in the classes with girls at the middle school that we teach at, because it's sort of getting to see, like, see their love for learning at times, especially during such a difficult time. And so it's helping me to relearn things I have forgotten from fifth grade, and also just sort of see the passion that they have for the world around them.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And since we've got three discerning students right now, or people who are discerning a service here with us, why don't you introduce yourselves as well? So, Casey, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name's Casey. I'm a senior at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I'm originally from Saugus, Massachusetts. It's right outside Boston. Yeah, I don't know if you want me to. I'm a sociology major. I don't know. Fun fact?
If you would like to, but that's good. It's nice to.
Sure. I love to read poetry, and yeah, Robert Frost is really cool. So yeah. Hi.
Awesome. Great, thank you. And now, Will, welcome.
Hi. So yeah, my name's Will. I'm a senior at Wake Forest in North Carolina, and I'm originally from New Jersey. And I'm a history major on a pre-med track. That makes sense. Yeah, I guess my hobby would be reading. One of my friends gave me a book on yellow fever, so not the most uplifting topic, but definitely very timely in this day and age we live in.
Oh, definitely. Oh, thank you for sharing. And then Isaac, welcome. Would you introduce yourself as well?
Hi, everyone. My name is Isaac. I'm a recent graduate of LMU. I got my BA in theology in May. I'm currently in San Francisco serving as a Mercy volunteer at a high school as a campus minister and assistant director of student activities.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining. We are also joined by our program manager, Olivia. So she's the other face here, but she might chime in at times, but she's here as well. So now we'll get into questions. So I'll answer, just start off with one of our questions here, and then Casey, Will, and Isaac, feel free to chime in and think of what questions you would like to ask as well. So the first question I'd like to ask is, what is one thing that you think sets BSVM apart from other service programs? So I'm going to start this off with Brian. Would you answer this one? But if anyone else, any of our other volunteers have an answer, go ahead and chime in as well.
What sets BSVM apart from other programs was how direct I found it was throughout the whole process. I personally went to a small school, and I knew like that the personal like one-on-one contact was a big thing for me. And so with BSVM and sometimes with larger service programs, you find like you're often meeting someone in like a regional director, or you're meeting someone who's just like a site. But with BSVM, starting with Paula, simply just meeting the recruiter, and like the interview process, I got to move through site supervisor, program, and then meeting the fact that you meet the program director herself as part of an aspect. I think that was something that was really cool, because I felt like throughout the whole thing, they wouldn't actually reading about who I was and were asking personal questions. And so like they, at the end of it and the time I got accepted, knew who had a sense of who I was. And so I think when you're doing something like a service year, you want the people who are going to know you over those 10 months to have a good sense of who you are and where you could be placed. And so I think BSVM sort of early on set itself apart with just having an aspect of just a very like small natured like structure and very direct.
Great, thank you. Any of our other volunteers have a good answer, anything they'd like to think of for what you think sets BSVM apart?
You know, for me, like something that really touched me was like the whole work where you live. You are going to be in the environment that you're serving, and you will live the life. Not exactly, but I think that the idea of being purposeful in not only service, but living and engagement and interaction set BSVM apart than any other program I had heard of, where it's usually like, oh, you may have to drive to where you're working, or like where you're working is something you go in and out of. But this community, like this environment, isn't something we go in and out of. It's like something that you're in. So you get that full immersion.
Yeah, that is one of the things that was the reason why I chose BSVM as well. So I know Isaac sent in some questions in advance as well. So I'm gonna, I have some of those that I'm gonna send to some of you. So one of the questions was to describe the diversity in your neighborhood and work site, and talking about any possibilities of working with a Spanish-speaking community. So I'm going to say, if any of the Richmond volunteers, would you like to answer that?
I can start. Yeah, so as far as the diversity in service sites goes, we've been fortunate enough to form a relationship with the Catholic high school nearby, Cristo Rey. They have a very good mix of demographic in their school. They take in kids from, they said like 30 different area codes around here, or 30 different zip codes, sorry, around Richmond and the surrounding area. So they do have a wide spread when it comes to the students that come to their school. There's a large Spanish-speaking population at their school. There's a larger African-American population. And then, yeah, so it's a good way for us to practice our Spanish. All three of us came in with some type of level of Spanish, definitely not at the level we wanted to be at this point, but you know, it is what it is. We're practicing, we're learning. So yeah, there's definite opportunity there yeah, sometimes Michaela definitely will be speaking to families and helping them to help their kids to understand the work that they're doing and the things that they need to complete. So yeah, definitely a place for Spanish speaking there. As far as the medical side, as much as that's possible in the future with, you know, Richmond Community Hospital and Sarah Garland Jones over here. That's also another opportunity for Spanish speaking service. They have the mobile, kind of like mobile hospital that they call the Caravan. And I know last year's volunteer, there was not only a diverse like population working with her, but she would also go out and just see all the populations of Richmond living here, another Spanish speaking opportunity there. So yeah, a lot of Spanish speaking opportunities in Richmond. The East End itself and like the Churchill neighborhood, definitely not, you know, the classic suburban demographic, but yeah, it is, it's a cool place to live, a diverse place to live, and you see a good spread of people, I would say.
That's great. I think it covered most of everything. Also, just share an aside too that I was in Baltimore for my service, and my community member Jocelyn her placement was in the emergency department, and she even got to speak some Spanish with some people that came into the emergency department and got to do some translating. It definitely was not the majority of the people in our neighborhood in Baltimore, but there were a few that would come through that it was nice. She was fluent in Spanish and had grown up in a Spanish-speaking country, so it was nice for her to get to use that. So now I'll throw it to Will and Casey or Isak. Would you like to share any more of your questions? What would you like to ask our volunteers?
Okay, I'll take a whack at it. What's been something that's sustained you throughout this year? I know for myself, being a volunteer during a pandemic has been really difficult. So I just want to hear about your experiences.
Yeah, I think being in a pandemic has been really hard, but I know for sure the one thing that's honestly sustained me is the community that I have surrounding me. Whether that be my housemates, like they're always finding ways to cheer you up, but they're always there for you, and they actually understand what you're going through because they're right there with you the whole time. So I feel like that's pretty much sustained me throughout this entire time. Without them, I don't know what I would do, to be honest. But even our site leader, very close to us, so we see her 3 times a week. So it's actually been nice to have someone outside the house as well to get to know and kind of share what you're going through with her as well. So that's been definitely the key point for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also think besides community, that's definitely something that sustained me, but something that also was surprising to me is the alumni support that the program has, like, not that the program is offered, but I think there's a lot of local alumni in the area that are very willing to meet us in a park because we are in a pandemic, and like talk about their experiences and share just like some pieces of wisdom and encouragement. And they just really do care about like your experience, and they want you to have the same like transformative year that they might have had. So I feel like that those moments that I've gotten to connect with alumni have also been really like sustaining and like grounding for me.
Sweet. Can I hear one more?
I can also go. I think the thing that has mostly sustained me is just how much emphasis we put on spiritual growth here, you know, one of our 5 pillars. And so I really appreciate just the opportunity to just have a lot of just like time and resources at my disposal when it comes to growing spiritually. You know, with like the books that we read together, with the prayer practices that have been introduced to us, retreat times, you know, things like that that I didn't really have at my disposal in college, or the time to really like, you know, invest in as much as I wanted to. So yeah, that's definitely been a comfort to me, kind of forming those new habits, and being able to like use them here to really center me and kind of like keep me focused on like what I'm here for.
That's great. Thank you. Oh, did you have something else? Lisa, go ahead. Okay. Well, we have a question as well about discernment and how you discerned with BSVM, and like what were you doing before you even thought of us, and as well as how did you kind of talk about this decision to do a service year after college with your friends and family? So I'll send that. Michaela, would you mind answering that one first?
Yeah. Discerning whether to do a year of service is definitely like not something to take lightly. I think there's like there's a lot that goes into a decision to do something like that, especially with all of the pressure that comes from like going to college and then being expected to get like a certain kind of job usually. I studied environmental studies and religion, and I have no idea what I'm going to do with that. So I was like, what are some creative ways for me to like give back, learn some new things, meet some new people. And I was kind of told about this whole world of like post-grad service, which was fascinating. And once I kind of was like learning about what that entailed and like the ability to live in community, the ability to live and serve in a new place, I was just like, wow, this seems like something that is could be really beneficial. It could really open my eyes to a lot of things that I haven't experienced yet. So I think the discerning process for me was, you know, of course, there's a lot of prayer involved, but there was also a lot of communication with trusted mentors, with my family, being like, what do you think if I were to go and live in this like city that I've never been to for 10 months and like see what it's like? And yeah, I don't know if there was like ever a moment where I was like, you know, like the light bulb went off and I was like, this is absolutely what I have to do. But like over time, the idea grew on me and I was like, this feels like something that would be just like a really powerful thing to like experience, which it has been so far. Like I've learned so much and I've only been here for 3 months. And, you know, I still think that I struggle on like a fairly regular basis with like, oh, should I have gotten a job right off the bat where like I was making salary or like, you know, living on my own somewhere in an apartment, and just kind of like trying to get started. But that's kind of like, you have to separate what society tells you to do, which is like, this is how to be successful, from what like God is calling you to do or what you feel like you want to do in order to have like a meaningful, impactful life. So I think for me, that's kind of, those are the things that went into it.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have anything to add about their discernment journeys?
Mine was like the opposite. I just Googled stuff. And like I had never heard of a service year really. And so I used Google to just like, oh, what should I do for a year after college? And then this popped up and I just like kept looking at it, looked through the website. I was like, all right, this sounds cool. Like I'll apply to this. And, you know, I got here and yeah, I was like, oh, this is great. You know, and I'll definitely like talking with Olivia and Shannon, she's like the director of it, as you're going through can definitely help you see like whether or not this is for you. So don't feel pressured in any way if you haven't like been super into like figuring out what it is that you're supposed to do or haven't thought about it for a long time, because yeah, I just use the internet. So yeah, you could go either way and still be here.
Thank you. I'll share too with that, like we structure our application process to be a mutual discernment process as well. So you don't have to absolutely like know that this is the one thing that I'm going to do when you submit your application, because you know, through your interviews and through talking with alumni and current volunteers, that is supposed to help you in your discernment as well. So like I myself applied to multiple postgrad service organizations, worked through the discernment process with each of them, and ultimately decided that this was the right fit, and did not know that when I was submitting my applications. I was still very open to many different opportunities, but it really became clear through my interviews and just knowing how intentional everything was with BSVM. Right. Anything else anybody would like to add for that one? Other questions then, before I'll go back to one of mine.
I guess one I have is, I'm sure there's y'all had moments when you were kind of out of your comfort zone and weren't, I guess we're kind of in an unfamiliar situation. I guess how did you approach that? And I guess how did you learn from that? Just whether in communication or just going forward in your service?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I'll just Destiny, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, being out of my comfort zone. Yeah, it's definitely happened being here. I think just in a service aspect, definitely outside of my comfort zone when it comes to, I guess, being like flexible and spontaneous in a work setting. I wasn't like super used to that from the start, but I mean, you know, everybody has had to get a lot more flexible and, you know, spontaneous when it comes to, you know, just life in general, just because you know, what life has thrown at us. So yeah, at first, you know, not knowing if like teachers would need me for office hours, or not knowing when a teacher would throw me in a breakout room and be like, teach some math right now, or like not knowing, you know, who we'd like meet on our trash walks or things like that. Just the yeah, just the discomfort that comes with like leaving your very like structured college life kind of hit me in the beginning. And I guess, I don't know, the way I got through that was just like, yeah, practice in a way, just continuing to keep myself open to those situations, you know, prayer, just kind of reflecting on them at the end of the day, just being like, yeah, this was kind of an uncomfortable day, but like, you know, what did I learn? Or like, was God saying anything in particular to me today? Or like, maybe it wasn't the worst thing in the world. Like maybe you did have fun teaching the kids math today. And like, even though you messed up and you didn't know how to multiply all of a sudden, like it still was fine. So yeah, things like that. Also just kind of the discomfort of, I guess, just being vulnerable in a small community setting for the first time. It's not quite like, you know, college living situations where you can really just be like in and out of the room, or you can just, you know, meet a bunch of friends like in a dining hall or something and like just be away from like your room or your living partners or whatever. So yeah, just that kind of discomfort with like sharing who you are, and you know, like trusting that the other people that you're living with are going to be gracious about it. And so once again, that is just something that takes time. And I think we, you know, me and my two Richmond housemates here have gotten to that point of, you know, being able to share deeper. And it just comes with, yeah, time and mutuality also, just like knowing that you all have the same goals in mind when it comes to like what you want your year to be and the depth that you want to get to, and like how you want to help each other with that. So.
That's such a great question. I think I'll share with my experience too, that there were definitely times that I became uncomfortable in community life. That was probably the biggest growth point for me. And by being brave and being vulnerable with my community members, that's how I grew through that. And it was outside of my comfort zone to live with 5 strangers that I had never met before. And that ended up being the greatest gift too, because they became the people that I am still probably the closest to in the world, because we were brave and vulnerable with one another, and broke down our walls with one another. So it does take a lot of bravery, but it is definitely worth it. Any other stories with becoming comfortable outside of your comfort zone?
I also think I definitely echo what Destiny and Paula talk about, but I think the first few weeks I also felt really out of my comfort zone living in this city setting. Even though I went to school in kind of a city setting, this neighborhood, I definitely felt a little out of my comfort zone. And I think, with COVID, that might have had something to do with it too. But I think something that this program really provides for you is opportunities to reflect and pray over those moments. And I've definitely felt supported in kind of unpacking that feeling of why I'm uncomfortable and practicing more open-mindedness and growing and learning from that discomfort that I had. And definitely have seen a big change in the past 3 months of where I feel comfortable here. So I think that's a good point too.
And I would say, pardon me, just to sort of, everything was already, eloquently said. One of the things when it comes to comfort zone is just probably to meet people where they're at. I think that was some of the biggest thing. Anywhere from your college life to your upbringing, everyone's sort of coming from a different region or perspective. And so it's not college sort of more of a pressure thing, but it's here it's listen, this is still going to be 10 months and it's going to be the same 5 people or 3-4 people that you're living with. And so it's really important at the beginning to sort of understand that meeting people where they're at, you're going to have to sort of adjust the way, or in terms of comfort of the things you're comfortable with, the other person, it's not they're totally shutting you out, but they're going to have to sort of work their way up to that and be equally as understanding of their sort of zone as they are of yours. And I think establishing that early on allows people to sort of grow together, which is sort of the great thing when it comes to community.
It's a great addition and a great question. I love that question. Reminds me, there's I think it was something our director Shannon would say is growth happens at the end of the comfort zone, or growth happens in the uncomfortable places, or something like that. It might be a quote from something too, but that definitely rings true. And so I love that question. We'll go to another question here of what is some an unexpected skill or something that you have gained this year so far in your service that you think will make you a better student or a healthcare worker or advocate for justice? So send that. Annalise, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, I think this year's really taught me how to sit back and listen to other people, because a lot of people have something to say, and whether or not you just give them to space to say it, it actually tells you a lot about them. So for example, at our service site, we actually do house calls to see if people want to be a part of this newsletter. And the other day, I had a call with an elderly lady, have no idea who she is, where she's from, anything like that. Ended up talking to her for about 30 to 45 minutes about life. And she's telling me about her illnesses, her medical conditions, whether she should be taking certain medicines. So no doctor here, but had to refer her to someone to go talk to them. But I think definitely compassion, empathy for what people are going through, because we're all doing the same thing. We're all struggling with mental health and everything that COVID brings. So I think the ability to break it down and actually just listen has been the biggest skill for me. But in terms of non-service, I actually learned how to cook this year. So if you can't cook, that is the one skill you will learn. So there's hope for everyone, trust me.
That's great. Anything else that anybody has to add to that? Any other unexpected skills that you guys have gained so far this year?
I think I can answer that. At Cristo Rey, which is the school that we work at, they have like a motto where they encourage all of the students to advocate for themselves. So they're always like, advocate, advocate, advocate. Like you can't get anywhere if you don't speak up for yourself. And I think in some cases, like just hearing it from the students has caused me to be like, yeah, that's right. You should advocate for yourself. And then like kind of living into that, whether that's like, how can I be advocating for myself in terms of like what I need in my community, or like how can I be advocating for like other people, like the students who I'm working with, like how can I, since I'm interacting with teachers and sometimes the students aren't advocating, and so like helping them advocate for themselves by like walking with them, but also like advocating for myself in other ways, like not related to service. It's just like, that all sounds very vague, but it's been kind of like a slow epiphany for me lately. It's just like this idea that there's a way that we can stand up for ourselves and for others when we see that things aren't going well, in order to like try to make a situation or a condition better, and like just like a better situation for everybody involved. And just like the power of like reminding people that they can advocate for themselves, and there's power in speaking up, not only for themselves, but for their peers, colleagues, for whomever. Has been, just something that I've learned that I think will definitely impact like how I move forward in like work life and just social life in general.
Yeah, that is definitely a great skill to learn. I'll share on this one too, just because now that I've had a year and a half out, I've been able to reflect on some of these skills that I've learned. And one of them has been kind of our tagline in community life is in communication is to be loving and direct with one another. And that is something that I brought to my family life, to like all of my relationships and roommates and things now, and friendships. And that was something that my family recognized in me too. They were like, whoa, like your communication skills are definitely different. Just because, tended to rely on other forms of communication, maybe relying too much on the loving and not as much on the directness, and like not stating my needs. And that was something that I really worked on during my service here and with my community, and has been a great skill that has helped me, not necessarily in like making me a better student, but I think it definitely is something that will that has helped me in work life and in my personal life as well. And then in terms of being an advocate for justice, there were just so many ways that my eyes were opened by living in a community that was very different from the way that I grew up. And I grew up very privileged, and knowing that I am like a white woman who has and holds many privileges in many areas. And so growing in relationship with people who had very different backgrounds, and living in a community that has been affected by gun violence and by poverty, and the way that it affects many other forms of like how just poverty affects all these forms of injustice. That has changed in the way I now think about justice and how I make decisions now. So now I think about, when I am moving someplace, how is my choosing to live in this neighborhood affecting the people in this neighborhood and affecting justice issues? So that's just on the top of my mind now, and that's made me changed me a lot in those ways. Does anyone have any other answers to this question of skills that you've gained so far? We'll move on to another question. Any of our discerning people have any other questions that they would like to jump in with? Well, I'll go to one, and just sharing about, what is something, this is actually one that Isak sent in as well that I really love. So what is an expectation that you've had to let go of in order to be more present this year? This is just a great one. Let's see, does anyone want to volunteer to answer this one? Or I'll throw it to someone. Let's see, Kelly, do you have an answer to this one? Sorry to call you out there.
You could tell I was really thinking deeply about this. I think an expectations that I could be more present this year to let go of is, I'm not sure if I'm there yet, to be honest. I think this might be a good question for me to journal on later, so I really appreciate you putting this out there, but I'm not sure if I have a formulated answer at this point, sorry.
I guess I would say this is probably an expectation that in letting go, like I'm evolving in that space. And so, we'll see in another 7 months how the process eventually turned out. But the expectation, I think, and I've discussed it, interesting enough, with like my community and Olivia, who's here, is the idea of what service is. I think when you do service in college, and something I learned, whether it was community service, which in itself, like, sometimes it's mandated by your school or something that you're doing on like a service trip. You sort of, when you're there for the week or there for however long, and it's sort of a direct, you're there every single day. They have a itinerary for you to do, and you're going here, and you sort of feel like you understand that you might not make a quick impact, but like you're able to sort of do something concrete every single day, I guess, when it comes to that type of service. And so the expectation, especially this year when it came to COVID, is that service necessarily doesn't always have to be this overall large gesture or necessary the sort of like, hands-on, like in a physical sense of doing service. Sometimes it is idea of being present with people, that people right now just needs, as Annalise mentioned, just someone who wants to be heard. Students just want to feel like they can have a space to express themselves, or that that their opinions are being heard or being felt during this time. And so the expectation is like, service doesn't have to be the one way I had learned before, but now it's something where I'm realizing service is just me being myself amongst other people, whether it's my community, whether it's me, delivering food, whether it's me just running a club. And so it could be done in person or it could be done online. And so at times to be open, like, it's something early on I struggled with, but gradually I'm hoping that expectation begins to lessen. And I'm fortunate that I've had people who are supporting me in through that process.
Mm-hmm. I really like what you said there about how, service is about being a compassionate presence, and it doesn't always happen how you expect. And it is very possible to be compassionate, and that happens in surprising ways and can happen definitely remotely. It doesn't have to be always in person. So that's really, thanks for answering that one. I think I'll kind of broaden that question too, is just what is a way that you have grown so far this year in your service? What, looking back, you're a couple months in now, been 3 months that you've been in your service. So What is a way that you notice yourself being different and growing? Throw that one. Tuzo, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah. I think one way that I've grown in service has been just in like what it means to be patient with how we adapt and how like different people like adapt to like environments that we don't have really like control over. Like I think in college it was very easy to like, I want to do something, so I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna join this organization, and I'm gonna join, you know, we're gonna go do this thing, and this is when this happens, and like, let's do it, let's go do this, or let's go make this happen. Like, it was very much, it's like what you felt if you wanted to. There was an avenue that was kind of straightforward on like, okay, I gotta go to this person to get this club signed up, and then like, you know, at least that's how it worked for us, like for me. And so I think like going into this program, something that I've learned through experience has been like, you know, when you aren't in control, like when you're not in control of service, and a lot of times you're not going to be, because the systems are set up for you to do service and you are not in control of like any of those, right? Like what is set up for you to do the service is something that you need to accept. And I think like that path for me has been something that I've grown into, and like understanding that like this position was put forth by lots of people for me to do. So like, let me respect that and let me do the best that I can with what's being asked in that position, even if it's not something that, you know, I would go to immediately, or not how I would want to do service exactly. Like the point still is not about me, the person doing service. It's about who you're serving. So, you know.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to share about their growth so far?
Yeah, I can go. For me, I've actually never taught before, and let alone on Zoom. So just for example, I came in my second day. I'm in a math class, Algebra 1, so I'm not sure if I even remember a single thing. And I come in and she goes, "Hey, we're learning fractions and two-step equations right now. Like, you think you can go in this breakout room and go teach it?" And I just had to be like, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to try my best. Like, can you send me the solutions? I was able to work it out with them. So eventually I've gotten used to this like uncertainty of not knowing what's going to come your way, but trying to make the best of every single situation, and just really trying to connect with the students and try to help them understand in a way that's relatable to them. So for example, today we had a problem on like 5 gigabytes of data. They don't know what 5 gigabytes of data, so you change it to like, oh, here's 5 Netflix movies or something. And so you can teach it in a more relatable way and try to actually connect to them. And it's a better way to actually get them engaged rather than just sitting behind a screen hoping that the class will be over soon. So I've definitely grown in numerous ways trying to just connect with people over Zoom and teach.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone have any final questions before I'll, I have one final question that I'll have everybody answer to kind of wrap things up, but want to make sure that we get all your questions answered. Anything that you would like to ask before we get into that? All right. Well, my final question then is, what is your greatest hope for future volunteers, or a piece of advice that you would like to give to people who may be entering a volunteer year? So we'll go in the opposite order that we did introductions. So we'll start with Brian. Sorry, to start with you. I know it's a big one.
what is your greatest hope for future volunteers? I think my greatest hope for future volunteers is to, sorry for the, I think the advice is just really to understand, so just sort of, I guess, value the time. I think one of the things that maybe this year has taught us or anything is that, take the liberty to, when you have the opportunity to explore things, whether it's your own identity, biases you have about yourself, your privilege, or just what makes you, the reasons of why you think certain things, and in this case through this program, even your faith. Because I think often sometimes I found myself stuck in a rigid way of how I used to think. And so with the time that you have here, sort of give yourself the opportunity to try something and to fail, or to, allow your community members to sort of push you. And I think with that time, you sort of get this the time is a freedom that I don't think sometimes you would see people around you, they don't necessarily have. And so in the opportunity that you get to be doing this, I'd say probably utilize it to the best of your ability, and feel free to reach out to the staff members or your community members to help you utilize it in the best way possible. And so I would just say, take advantage of the time that you have now.
That's great. Thank you. Kelly, what is your greatest hope or piece of advice?
I think I hope that future volunteers can recognize the power of vulnerability and what that can do for a community. I think some of the best memories that I have from the past 3 months here are sharing a late night snack with someone and just talking about something meaningful, or sharing a piece of myself and hearing, them want to know more about it and them share pieces of themselves too. So I think just knowing how moments of vulnerability have made my experience here really meaningful, and hoping that future volunteers will lean into that as well.
Thank you. Next up, Tuzo.
Yeah, I think for advice, just bring who you are, and no matter what service program you choose to do, no matter where you think you want to do in career-wise, who you are is who you have for the rest of your life. And so the best way for you to grow, and the best way for you to sort of see who you like to be around, what you like to do, and ways to truly be encouraged by others because they know you, because you're being who you are, is to just be who you are. And of course that's easier said than done. I think we're taught to sort of try to be normal in many different ways, but I think the moments that have shown through the most is at least for me here, is when we're able to be ourselves. Not just when we're doing well, but also when we're not doing well, or when we have something to complain about or vent about, or share about why this thing sucks and why someone else disagrees, peanut butter deserves to be crunchy or not. Just being that you allows those moments to come through. So I know it's tough, but try and be yourself no matter where you choose to go through with your year.
Thank you for that. Now, Michaela.
Yeah, I think that something that I would, both a hope and just some advice, is being willing to take risks together as a community, is in things that you might feel uncomfortable doing, but talking through it, be why does this make us uncomfortable? What is this something that we're processing? In terms of maybe you don't want to pick up trash in a certain part of town, and you're just is that because it's actually a certain way, or is that because I have all these preconceived notions? which is like something that like I've thought about as I'm like interacting in a new neighborhood that's like unfamiliar to me, but it's like over time become a place that I love. But then also like taking risks in terms of like building relationships with people who are complete strangers when you start out, whether that's like inside your house or like people you meet in the community, just like being willing, echoing what Kelly said, like that vulnerability and just kind of like pushing each other to continue to dig deeper, even when it might be frustrating or you don't really see like a whole lot of like the fruits of that labor, like just knowing that at some point it will blossom into something. And if it doesn't, you probably still learned something within that experience. And I think that, being able to do that and experience that in community is something that I would hope for each year that follows.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, Destiny.
I would say my piece of advice is to not rush your growth or measure your growth on other people's expectations. So I feel like when I am going into another like phase of life or like discerning something or going into like another big step, I tend to come in with expectations on like where I expect myself to be after a certain amount of time of doing it. Especially in a program like this where spiritual growth is a big aspect. It's tempting to, like see your housemates, like read scripture every morning or like get up to pray or like, know a lot about a certain spiritual topic or be super like, wise about something and just be like, like I'm not there, so that must mean I'm not, growing or not doing a good job or something like that. So yeah, just really kind of, sitting down with God at the beginning and just being like, I'm going to put in my best into this and, we're going to be honest with each other and I'm going to be honest with you about my good days and my bad days and like, just like continuing to show up and continuing to be present and continuing to open yourself up to what God has for you, like is all you can do. Like you can't measure the growth. You can't like, you can always like set, goals for yourself. You can, kind of be like, okay, so I really can't sit still for prayer for 20 minutes yet, so like let's do 5, like kind of things like that are like gentle nudgings like for yourself by yourself to get to kind of where you want to be. But yeah, it's never really like a success or failure kind of thing. It's always just as long as you have that mentality of like let's sit, let's reflect, let's be honest, but let's also not like judge yourself. Having grace for yourself is really the biggest thing there when it comes to measuring your growth or seeing other people grow, and also celebrating other people's growth too. Like, it should never be a competition. It should always be like a celebration of like, I'm, genuinely happy that you can wake up before sunrise and pray to God, because that must be like such a magical moment for you. But I can have that magic at 11 a.m. and like it'll still be okay, So yeah, grace with yourself and others is the big thing.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, last but again not least, is Annalise.
Yeah, so I think my biggest hope is that no matter what you do, whether it's this program or not, that you find meaning with whatever you're going to do. The biggest thing is like your time is the most precious thing you have, and that's one thing you can never get back. So I think spending it wisely and spending it with people that you actually enjoy spending with is huge. But a piece of advice is if you're on the fence about service, 110% do it. Like, no doubt it's one of the greatest things that you can do. And it's just like getting to know people and then growing in all aspects of your life. This wholeness of this program is so great because you can work on your like professional aspect as well as your spiritual, and then your growth on yourself. So you're growing in every way you possibly can. So I think that's one great thing that BSVM offers that many other places may not be able to match.
Well, thank you. That was a great summary, a great way to wrap it up. I'm going to thank all of our people who joined, all the people that are watching on Facebook as well. Hello, shout out to I think some alums are watching, so hello. And then also thank you to our current volunteers for sharing about their experiences and being vulnerable with us here too. If you guys have any further questions, please reach out to me. I think you all probably have my phone number as well. You also should have connected with one of the current volunteers if you would like to chat one-on-one with them. But if you have not, please let me know and I will make sure that you're able to connect if you would like to chat one-on-one with any of our volunteers. And a reminder that our application deadline is January 15th, coming up.
And Paul, can I jump in real quick?
Oh, yes.
I just wanted to say, make sure I'll try to get everyone's name right. And if I don't, I apologize. It is Casey, Isak, and Will. Is that right? Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you to you and for taking the first step or first of maybe a couple steps that you're taking towards this discernment. By being here with us, you're being brave. And so really appreciate your bravery already to start to explore and wish you the best as you're discerning and know that we will be here to help you in that discernment process if you wish. So, and thanks, Paul. You did a great job.
Thanks so much, Olivia. All right. Thank you, guys. I'll go ahead and stop the Facebook stream and have a good evening, everybody.